I was once working at a fast food restaurant. Working there stopped me from eating from this place ever again. It's everyone's favorite spot to get burgers and fries, and it seems like no matter what people tell you, people still continue to eat because how cheap it is. But let's start with the customers. Always be nice to your servers because I had a couple of coworkers that would take the burger meat, rub it onto the floor, and serve it to the customers that came off rude. The restaurant had mice, and if they found something, they got to it. There was a particular day where I accidentally left out the burger buns, and the mice, of course, got to them. On my way to toss them into the trash, my manager stops me and says, "We're low on stock for the burger buns. We need to keep those." And they were served to multiple families. There's way more dangerous things that went down, but if you guys want me to disclose everyone's favorite restaurant, let me know down below if I should make a part. Part 2 of the most disgusting fast food restaurant I've ever worked for. And here's a couple of things I think you should know. The hiring process is super easy. You literally just gotta be 16. Okay, so back to the food. When it came to preparing food, the guys in the back that would prepare the food would never change their gloves. They would go from touching doors, cleaning things, to back to preparing food again. I'm pretty sure most of the food they made was contaminated. Our manager was the worst. She loved the food they had and sometimes would pick up a batch of fries with her bare hands and would just eat as she worked. Half the time when she got done with counting money, she wouldn't wash her hands neither. And y'all know how dirty money is. Now exposing the restaurant. I said if you guys comment down below, I might just tell you guys what fast food restaurant it was. But if this TikTok blows up, I do not want to get sued. Just know they make burger fries and they're the most popular fast food restaurant in the world. There was a girl named Jessica Phillips that went missing in my high school. She went missing in the middle of our junior year. When her parents came out about it, the school put posters up everywhere, alerts on the news. 2 weeks later, they decorated her locker. Ever so often I see her closest friend weeping during class, and the teachers would excuse them out. The devotion of love she was getting after she went missing was outstanding. But the thing is, no one liked Jessica. Actually, everyone hated her. Don't get me wrong, she was the most popular girl in school, but she was an asshole. She was very nasty and rude and did anything to get what she wanted. I heard she once gave this boy Ronnie peanuts for not doing her homework anymore. He wanted to get into sports and didn't have time for it, and he was allergic to peanuts. The girl was practically a bully. Her friends were all followers that secretly hated her but wanted to be her. But it's crazy to see them all crying over her whereabouts when they all wanted her gone. But I know why she went missing. Come back for part 2. Jessica going missing didn't faze me. Actually, the days felt lighter when she wasn't there. Yeah, she was the talk of the town for weeks, but I'd rather that than to actually see her. And I know some might say I'm heartless, but Jessica did it to herself. So the night of Nicole's birthday party is when it all started. Nicole and Jessica were like frenemies. I mean, they were friends, but they were always in competition with each other. I'd say Nicole was the second popular girl in school. She was the first, but she dropped to second because she lost her boyfriend Luke to Jessica. He cheated on her with Jessica. I can say that's when the war started. Anyways, the night of Nicole's party, Jessica wasn't invited. I remember overhearing her during lunch that she was going to plan to crash and ruin Nicole's party. Pretty devious if you ask me. So the night comes and I go to Nicole's party. An hour goes by and I take a step outside of the side of the house to get some fresh air. I see Jessica creeping from the back. I say, "Jessica, is that you?" She looks at me and before I know when someone grabs her face and pulls her into the bushes. So the night Jessica went missing, I saw exactly what happened. She tried to sneak into Nicole's party, but she actually didn't get in. Not only because she wasn't invited, but she had got pulled into the bushes. When I ran to see where she was pulled, she was dragged by 2 guys into the streets. I was in shock and I stood there for a few seconds, but those few seconds, Jessica saw me. She screamed for me to help her, but I just stood there. They threw her into a car and drove off. I went back to the party as though nothing happened. After the party was over, I went back home and I kept replaying what happened over and over. Then that next Wednesday is when everyone started hearing about Jessica going missing. They said if anyone ever saw anything to come forward, but I decided not to. There were moments throughout the week where I felt like I should say something, but there were times that I felt like it was too late. I thought maybe she was dead by now and it'd be pointless for me to come out now. But everything changed when I got a message from a block number saying, "Why didn't you save me?" When I was younger, I grew up with a cut on my face. It went down from my cheekbone all the way down to my neck. It was very long, the longest cut anyone has ever seen. When I was in school, teachers and students would ask, how did I get that cut, or if it still hurt? I would tell them it didn't hurt, but I didn't know where the cut came from. My mom actually told me I was born with it. Some teachers would say, that doesn't look like a cut you were born with. I think when I got a little older to understand, I asked my mom again, how did I get this cut on my face? She'd say, as usual, you were born with it. But I don't know, I just had a feeling there was something she wasn't telling me. If I could, I asked my dad, but my mom told me that he passed away a couple weeks after I was born. When I turned 18, I finally went to the dermatologist to see what was up with this cut. They told me the cut looked as though someone cut me with a sharp object. Later that week, I went to my aunt's house and told her about my dermatologist visit. She broke down in tears and started apologizing. Come back for part 2. So after going to the dermatologist about the cut I had on my face my entire life, I went to my aunt about it and she broke down and cried. She apologized and told me that I needed to speak to my mom. She said she thought it would be best if she told me. So I went home a bit confused and I talked to my mom. I told her the dermatologist told me the cut on my face wasn't from something I was born with. My mom looked at me and said, I never told you because I didn't want you to feel bad about this family, your father, but when you were 3 weeks old, your dad did this to you. I said, what? What do you mean? He did this to me? Why? She replied, your dad was really sick. I cried and asked, why would he do this? She looked at me and said that he tried to get rid of you. We couldn't afford to take care of you. But I pushed him off of you before he could have did anything. She said my aunt had called the police. My mom and dad were fighting and they shot him and he died that day. Storytime about the guy who pretended to be transgender to get into the girls' bathroom. So we're going to go ahead and call him Danny. And at the time I knew of Danny, but I didn't really know him. We weren't friends or nothing like that. Danny was known as the gay guy. He would always have his makeup done and he would hang out with some of the girls. Everything was fine and cool until we entered our junior year and Danny came out as transgender. He started wearing wigs and dressing more feminine-like. Now, when he would get dressed up, he would look completely different than what he looked like as his, born male self. You would think that he was a different person when he would get dressed up. Well, one particular day, he didn't get dressed up and he entered the girls' bathroom. When he did that, all of a sudden, it was a big group of girls running out of the bathroom screaming. If you guys want to know why they ran out, come back for part 2. This is part 2 of the guy that pretended to be transgender to get into the girls' bathroom. So, like I said before, junior year was the year Danny came out as transgender. Some days he'd get dressed up, some days he didn't. When he entered the girls' bathroom, a group of girls ran out of the bathroom screaming. I think maybe a couple hours later, after lunch, Danny was called to the office and rumors went around about Danny trying to look through the girls' stalls. One girl claimed that he was peeking through the stall to look at one of her friends, and Danny was suspended. I think 2 weeks later, Danny came back to school, and she completely stopped wearing feminine-type outfits. That same week, me and my friend Kenneth were walking past the boys' bathroom, and we heard a lot of fumbling going on. I told him to go check what was going on. When he checked, there was a group of guys in the bathroom jumping Danny. I'm running out of time. Come back for part 3. Part 3 of the guy that pretended to be transgender to get into the girls' bathroom. So, like I said earlier, Danny was in the bathroom and he was getting jumped by a group of guys. After it was over, he walked out last and he walked over to his locker. So I followed him to see if he was okay, and he had a black eye and his lip was busted. I asked him if he wanted me to walk him to the nurse and why did they even jump him. Danny replied, the guy said I'm not allowed into their bathrooms anymore. He said anytime he ever entered there, he'd get bullied or teased for being gay. Then I asked him, I thought you were transgender. He said that because he didn't want to go into the guys' bathrooms anymore. I said, what about the incident about you peeking through the girls' stalls? He said, I never looked through any of the girls' stall. I was just seeing to see who was in the bathroom so I could go in. He said, I'm gay, I don't even like girls, and it wasn't my intentions to make anyone uncomfortable. Storytime on how I found out my friend was homeless, and at the time we were both 11, and let's call her Aaliyah because I don't want to expose her real identity. Me and Aaliyah were really close. She always wanted to come over my house. My family liked her around because she was like another daughter. My mom loved the fact that she ate her cooking, and also I was the only girl. I had 3 other siblings that were all boys, so Aaliyah was basically my sister. Anytime I'd go outside, Aaliyah was always outside, so always had someone to play with. But one thing I will say is that she smelled funky, but I ignored it because she was a really nice person. Anyways, my birthday came up and I wanted to have a sleepover. My mom said she needed to talk to everyone's parents to make sure if they were allowed to sleep over. My mom talked to everyone's mom besides Aaliyah. I asked Aaliyah if her mom could speak to my mom, but she said she didn't need permission to sleep over. I was like, "You're lying. Where do you live?" And she's like, "Never mind. I probably can't. I'm going to just go home." I was like, "Go home?" And she was like, "Yes, I gotta go." When she left, I secretly followed her home. She walked for about 20 minutes until she came to a stop and went into a tent by a tree. I'll be back with the next part in part 2. Part 2 on how I found out my friend was homeless, and at the time we were both 11. So like I said earlier, I followed her home for about 20 minutes until she came to a stop and went into a tent by a tree. I was so confused because she told me she was going home. Why lie? So I went closer to the tent and shook it and then went around to open it. When I opened it, she had canned food piled in the corner with a blanket down the bottom. She had a lot of things packed into her little old tent. I asked, "What's going on? Are you going camping?" She looked down and said, "This is where I live." I was like, "How does your family live in here?" And she cried and explained that it was just her. Come to find out, she was a foster, but she ran away from home because her foster mom would bring in strange men around her and the rest of the girls that lived in the house with her. I'm not going into full details about what happened because I don't want to put too much of her business out there, but she was touched. It took a couple days for her to come out and tell me about it. She begged me not to tell anyone where she lives because she didn't want to get sent back, but I didn't feel right knowing that she lived in that tent. Part 3 on how I found out my friend was homeless, and at the time we were both 11, so I found out she was living in a tent due to her not liking the treatment she was getting by her foster parent. She told me not to tell anyone where she lived because she didn't want to go back, but I didn't feel okay knowing that she lived in that tent. So a week later, I went and told my mom everything she told me, and I was hoping she could help. I suggested to my mom maybe we could adopt her, but my mom wasn't too fond of the idea, so she called this hotline. I forgot the name, but they supposedly helped with stuff like this. She told them everything I told her, and I also spoke to them myself. Then maybe the next morning, they came into my house and they wanted me to direct where Aaliyah was living. They found her and took her in. I was so happy that she was going to get the help she needed, but 2 months later, I didn't see nor hear from her. I asked my mom if she could call the hotline people, but she said she would, but she never did. Then maybe 2 to 3 weeks later, I see Aaliyah outside and I get excited and run to her, and when I get closer, she had a black eye. I was like, "What happened?" And she said, "You," and walked away. After that day, I never saw her again.